Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, September 21st, 2021 meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. We'll start out, Kathy, with our roll call.
All right. Good afternoon. And just as an FYI, if anyone's watching on cable or if you're getting emails or texts, we're having the same issue where it's just showing Chapel Hill instead of Carrboro. So we're trying to get that fixed. It's a Spectrum issue. So just as an FYI, that's on television only. So we should be good on YouTube and on our streaming, but not on the cable. All right. Mayor Lydia Lavelle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Barbara Foushee.
Present.
Councilmember Jacqueline Gist. I'm not looking, but
Present.
I know she's there. Okay.
Present.
Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Present.
Councilmember Susan Romaine.
I'm present.
Councilmember Damon Siles.
Present.
And Councilmember Sammy Slade.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good. So we'll start out here with a poetry reading, as we do every council meeting. And I saw that Fred is in the waiting room coming over.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Fred.
How you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you and good to be seen, as folks say. I'm gonna read a poem. So John Coltrane, actually, Randy, you just mentioned Miles Davis a few minutes ago before the meeting started, and Milestones, yeah. So one of the musicians that played on that tune was John Coltrane, if you can see him there.
That's right, North Carolina.
That's right, Hamlet, North Carolina. High Point, his grandfather was a pastor in High Point, and so his birthday is coming up September 23rd. And so I thought that it would be cool to read a poem about John Coltrane from this little collection called Jazz Poems. This is a great little book. You can go out and pick this up. It was edited by Kevin Young, who is the director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in DC now. So the poem, it's a little anthology of poems. This poem that I'm going to read is written by another patron saint of mine, Michael S. Harper. He was a professor of English at Brown University for a long time, and just an amazing poet. So this poem is called Here Where Coltrane Is. And the reason why I like this poem is because so many poems that we read or so much of what we hear about Train is, you know, how muscular the music was. And we don't hear a lot about the tenderness of his life and the fragility of him. And so this poem, I think, kind of speaks to that a little bit, just to the everyday life of jazz music. Here Where Coltrane Is. Soul and race are private dominions, memories and modal songs, a tenor blossoming, which would paint suffering a clear color, but is not in this Victorian house without oil in 0-degree weather and a 40-mile-an-hour wind. It is all a well-knit family, a love supreme. Oak leaves pile up on a walkway and steps, Catholic as apples, and a special mist of clear white children who love my children. I play Alabama on a warped record player, skipping the scratches on your faces over the fibrous conical hairs of plastic under the wooden floors. Dreaming on a train from New York to Philly, you hand out 6 notes, which become an anthem to our memories of you. Oak, birch, maple, apple, cocoa, rubber. For this reason, Martin is dead. For this reason, Malcolm is dead. For this reason, Coltrane is dead. In the eyes of my first son are the browns of these men and their music.
Awesome.
So, yeah, it's a really special little poem because I like that it brings in the natural world. It brings in so much of the beauty that I think Train tried to create in his music. So yeah, that's Jazz Poems edited. It's this little pocket series of books, and they're usually little anthologies. So,
Hey,
Nice.
Fred, all I'm going to say is, dear Lord.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, one of my favorite tunes. Thank you so much, y'all.
Fred, thank you. As
Sure.
always, awesome
Thank you,
way to
Fred.
start out our meeting. So,
All right. Good night.
Okay. Let's so we're moving on now then. We have a couple of proclamations. Our first proclamation is Diaper Need Awareness Week. And Kathy, I was thinking that Michelle would be here, but it looks like there maybe it might be another. I see the name Janice Fern, but we'll see who comes over here.
Hi, everybody. My name is
Wait, we
Janine.
can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, you can't hear me still?
Can't hear your voice. I don't see you muted, but just double check and make sure there's not something there messing with your voice.
I can hear her.
I can hear her very clearly too. It might be something.
Go down under mute. Are you able to see the mute on the bottom left?
Mayor
Oh, yeah.
Lavelle.
And
I'm
just
unmuted.
click that little arrow up and see if maybe there's another microphone you can check.
Lydia, I think other
You're
people
off
can
now.
hear her.
But
I
check
can hear
something.
her
We can
too.
hear you. I think Mayor Lavelle's having trouble.
Lydia, we can hear her.
All right, can you say something now? Still can't hear you?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Janice.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't you do this? I'm going to read the proclamation, and maybe any remarks. Gosh, Kathy, how do you want to do this? Do you want to? Oh, you guys can hear her. Oh,
Lydia,
Yeah.
other people can hear her.
I'm good. I'm good. Sorry, I'm so sorry. When I just delete. Yeah, okay. I just turned off my sound over there because things were going off. Very good. All right, it's all me. Thank you for joining us. It's awesome. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm the associate director of the Diaper Bank. Michelle wanted to be here, but actually she moved today. So she's a little busy and asked me to step in. I feel so honored to be here tonight. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for being here, Janice. All right, let me go ahead and read the proclamation then for the Diaper Bank. Diaper Need Awareness Week.
Yes.
Whereas diaper need, the condition of not having a sufficient supply of clean diapers to keep babies and toddlers clean, dry, and healthy, can adversely affect the health and well-being of babies, toddlers, and their families. And whereas purchasing enough diapers to keep a baby or toddler clean, dry, and healthy can consume 14% of a low-wage family's post-tax income, making it difficult to obtain sufficient supply. And whereas a daily or weekly supply of diapers is generally an eligibility requirement for babies and toddlers to participate in child care programs and quality early education programs. And whereas without enough diapers, babies and toddlers risk infections and health problems that may require medical attention and may prevent parents from attending work or school, thereby hurting the family's economic prospects and well-being. And whereas the people of Carrboro recognize that diaper need is a public health issue, and addressing diaper need can lead to economic opportunity for the state's families and communities and improved health for children, thus ensuring all people have access to the basic necessities required to thrive and reach their full potential. And whereas Carrboro is proud to be home to trusted community-based organizations, including Diaper Bank of North Carolina, that recognize the importance of diapers in ensuring health and providing economic stability for families, and thus distribute diapers to families through various channels. And whereas Diaper Bank of North Carolina and its staff and volunteers served on the front lines of Carrboro's COVID-19 pandemic response, helping families in our communities weather the crisis. Now therefore be resolved, I, Lady Lavelle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim the week of September 27 through October 3rd as Diaper Need Awareness Week in the town of Carrboro. Thank the aforementioned Diaper Bank, their staff, volunteers, and donors for their service during the COVID-19 crisis, and encourage the residents of Carrboro to donate generously to diaper banks, diaper drives, and those organizations that collect and distribute diapers to those struggling with diaper need, so that all of Carrboro's children and families can thrive and reach their full potential. This the 21st day of September, 2021. So, I think I've issued that proclamation for several years now. It's so important. Janice, do you want to make any remarks?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we all know how the pandemic has impacted families, and, Orange County is certainly no exception. And we just really appreciate everything that the town of Carrboro has done to always support our work, and really appreciate you helping us recognize Diaper Need Awareness Week.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks again for being here, and tell Michelle hello for us. So
I certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, y'all. Our next proclamation then is Minority Enterprise Development Week. And so let's see, Kathy, I think that Dolores Bailey was going to be joining us for this one.
That's right. I'm bringing her over.
Hey.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, good to see you.
Dolores got my favorite colors. Is that some blue?
That's
over
right.
All right.
I wore my Zeta blue instead of my pink and green for you, Barbara.
All right. So we have Dolores Bailey, the Executive Director of Empowerment, Inc., with us tonight. As I read this proclamation entitled Minority Enterprise Development Week. So, whereas in 1983, the Minority Business Development Agency, an agency of the United States Department of Commerce, held the first Minority Enterprise Development Week. Since then, it has been observed annually by agencies and organizations at the federal, state, and local levels. And whereas Minority Enterprise Development Week, often referred to as Med Week, serves to celebrate the accomplishments of minority-owned businesses and recognize individuals who have excelled as entrepreneurs and business leaders. And whereas despite systemic institutional racism that restricted access to capital, property, markets, advertising, and all other aspects of commerce, minorities have used their talents, ideas, passions, hard work, and tenacity to build successful business enterprises throughout our nation's history. According to the Minority Business Development Agency, the number of minority-owned businesses in the United States grew from approximately 300,000 in 1969 to over 11 million in 2020. And whereas despite the COVID-19 pandemic, 2021 will see a wide variety of Med Week events throughout the United States. This includes the Minority Business Development Agency's annual Med Week conference, which will feature a variety of online events from September 19 through 25. Information on how to register for these events can be found at, and there's a link, it'll be on the proclamation on our webpage. Events in North Carolina are scheduled for October 4 through 8 in Wilmington and October 12 through 15 in Charlotte. And information on those events can be found at the North Carolina Department of Administration website. Again, the link will be on the proclamation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Lady Lavelle, Mayor of Carrboro, do hereby proclaim September 19 through 25 as Minority Enterprise Development Week in the town of Carrboro. I encourage all residents to honor the achievements of minority business owners and to commit ourselves to creating a truly equitable economic system so all people can share equally in the promise of our community and our nation. So there you go with that one. Awesome. Dee, you want to say anything to the group here while you accept the proclamation?
I do, Madam Mayor, and thank you, members of the town of Carrboro, councilmen, for honoring Minority Entrepreneurship Week, Development Week. Thank you, town of Carrboro, for, on behalf of minority businesses throughout Carrboro, for the small businesses that are growing in Carrboro. Thank you for having the insight to create a business grant so many, many years ago that supported minority businesses. And thank you for being there during COVID with your grant funding for many small businesses in Carrboro that Empowerment was able to help get. Thank you for understanding small businesses, especially minority businesses, need your support. And entrepreneurs of color growing in Carrboro need your support. Thank you for allowing me, Dolores Bailey, an African-American woman, head of the Midway Business Center, which has put several businesses in Carrboro to work. Thank you for allowing me to be in front of you to appreciate you all honoring the Minority Entrepreneurship Development Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. I mean, you're welcome here every meeting, so we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you. So thank you. Those are really kind remarks. So let's go Susan and then Randy.
Yes, thank you for being here, Dolores. And I have a quick question for you. I read something about, as part of the BIPOC campaign, there was going to be a listing of all of our BIPOC-owned businesses. And I'm just curious when you think that will be available and how we can go about publicizing that.
So we have been working with Anita, and we are going to get that out. She and I are working with the NAACP committee, entrepreneurship committee, and there's one other committee. We are working on that, Susan, along with Orange County.
Great. I'll look forward to seeing it and sharing it as much as I can. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Take care, Dolores.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Randy?
Yeah, Dolores, I love seeing this proclamation. This is how you model the way, right? I do want to say that in the branch meeting this week, Herman and Deb Stroman and Carol and Perry and I were talking about, how we can unify in creating the list of Black, Brown, BIPOC businesses and how we can work together. And so that's something that I'm hoping that we work with John Hartman Brown and the roundtable to do. So just so you know that, oh my goodness, it was yesterday that we had the meeting. It seems like a long week already, but thank you for your leadership. And in particular, I want to underscore your work with women, because I think that sometimes gets lost. And that's something you and I have had conversations over the last 2 decades about. So, your leadership, you're modeling the way, you're willing to challenge the process, enable the heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Randy. Barbara.
Miss Dolores Bailey, my sister in service in the community, my sister in the Divine Nine. You had me over here about to cry, for real. I appreciate your leadership in the community. I appreciate your mentorship that I know that you give to others, and the support. I see you moving in many different spaces and just doing what you do. And so I just wanted to just say thank you, a heartfelt thank you for all that you do. And it's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Jackie?
Just wanted to thank you, Dee. You were leading before people knew that they needed a leader. I remember when you ran into bureaucratic problems and when you ran into systems problems, and you never gave up. In fact, you stood up and you challenged the systems and said, why are they this way? And began to make changes. So I think it's your constant asking, why does it have to be this way? Why can't it be this other way? has really created systemic change in our community over the long term. And you've done it quietly, and you've done it with great building up of ground support. And so I really appreciate all that you've done and continue to do for us. So thank you. I remember when you were first starting.
It was hard. It has been hard. It has been. But thank you all.
Okay. Thanks, Jackie. Thank you for that. Well, Dee, you can tell we love you. So it's great to have you here tonight, and we appreciate you being here. So
thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, moving on with our agenda. Next, we have announcement of upcoming meetings. Kathy.
Yes. All right. The Carrboro Connects Community Open House that was previously scheduled for Town Commons on September 22nd, tomorrow at 7 o'clock, has been moved to virtual. So just make sure that you know that it's now a virtual rather than a drop-in at Town Commons. The Racial Equity Commission meeting is scheduled for September 23rd at 6 p.m. and that will be via Zoom. And those are the only two meetings between your next meeting next Tuesday.
Okay, let's see. I think I have one to mention, but let's go to Jackie first. Can't hear you, Jackie.
Thank you. I've had a lot of people, myself included, we're very much looking forward to getting together tomorrow for the open house for Carrboro, for the comprehensive plan. And I fully realize why it has to go remote. Do we know if there are going to be breakout rooms where people can go talk and talk together? Do we have a system for that yet? Because I think it's a great time for people to talk to each other and get each other's opinions on what's going on, rather than just having one speaker at a time. It's a good time to connect. Do we know what the structure is going to be tomorrow night?
Yes, I can help with that. There will be breakout rooms based on various topics. So there will be opportunities for small groups to get together, organized around various topics for that purpose.
Will people be able to go from one topic to the other? I think so many people are interested in more than one topic.
I'm not certain, but I can confirm that.
I think that would be really useful. I think between there's so much good stuff there. I think people would hate to have to just pick one. I know I would.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah. So that for those that were not aware who might be watching out there, because of the threat of inclement weather on Wednesday, this has been moved to Zoom. And I think I remember right, we're looking at the schedule of meetings, Kathy. I think the Comprehensive Plan Task Force is then supposed to have a meeting on Thursday, I think, right? So that's another meeting that's going on, but that was on Thursday. So, okay. Any other announcements then about meetings or anything? We're all good with that. All right. So now before we go on to public comment, let's see. Oh, okay. We already said that announcement. Okay, let's go on then to public comment.
Okay, the first person I have signed up is Khadija Amina. Khadija, if you could raise your hand. I'm not up there. I see you. I'll bring you over now. You won't have to push any buttons.
Khadija, can you hear us?
Khadija, I think you are still muted. If you could unmute.
Am I unmuted now? I've been pressing this button over and over again.
We can hear
you. You are unmuted now. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, so I usually don't have my video on because my computer just times out, and I was advised to at least keep the off and then I can possibly stay connected. I don't know what's going on with it.
No, that's absolutely fine with us. But feel free to tell us what you're here to talk about. You have a soft 3 minutes to talk to us.
Okay, I'm here to talk to you about, I'm here as a resident living in one of Community Home Trust buildings, which is the Landons. And I'm here to talk about my quality of life living at the Landons. When Community Home first took over the Landons, Robert Downing was the ED, and he had a very positive open door policy. And he's not here anymore, and now we have another ED who doesn't have that policy. Actually, she's very aloof. We rarely even hear from her, see her. We've tried to communicate with her, and she's not communicative. The other issues that we have, she instituted like the TAC, Tenant Advisory Committee, and they're supposed to be a liaison between us and the residents, which that does not work because they're residents themselves and people don't feel comfortable to talk to them about issues. And then it causes confusion because we have them and we have the manager and then we have all these other entities, which just makes things very unnecessarily cluttered and complicated. And because Kimberly was the one that established them, there seems to be a conflict of interest and them being able to advocate for us. So we don't consider them advocates for us. The company that they have recently hired to manage the development usually is understaffing the maintenance here. That is a big problem. For some reason, there seems to be funding issues whenever we ask about why we can't get a full-time maintenance person here. If any of you ever walk around in this development, you can visibly see what the problems are here. I mean, we've been talking about this for the longest, but really, if you don't believe us, just come walk around. You'll see it with your own two eyes. We don't even have to tell you much, but I'm going to tell you some stuff. So the understaffing here, we can't get maintenance done here in our apartments. And the people that they hire, I don't know how they keep a job, but when part of their job description is that they are supposed to maintain the grounds, but they refuse to maintain the grounds. And so the grounds either don't get maintained or they have to hire another person, spend more money that they say that they don't have when we try to get things done in here to do the stuff that the maintenance person is supposed to do. Community Home Trust has said that they're going to replace some of the appliances and products that we have in here, and they are replacing them, but they're replacing them with inferior products. And so not only in our apartments is that diminishing the quality in our apartment from what we have, but it's also on the exterior of the building and the appearance, because they took down the awnings that we've had here for, 8 years. When they came, they took the awnings down that were ornamental and very beautiful. Then they put in lighting that it took us forever to get them to put in our parking lot that was pitch black at night. They finally put the lighting in, and then they have exposed poles that connect the lighting because it's electrical. And then we're in 2021, and I don't know why anybody would use wired poles and lighting to install that, but it looks unsightly and just, tacky and tragic. They replaced some of the fixtures in our apartment, like the ceiling fixture, the fixture in the kitchen. We had a really nice ornamental track light. They replaced it with an industrial light that's so gigantic that it's so close to the vent, it's clearly too big for the kitchen. So I'm just giving those as examples of when they say they're making improvements, they're actually not making improvements. They're really degrading the building and the way that it looks. When I first moved here, this place was gorgeous. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. The fixtures was gorgeous. Everything in here was wonderful. We loved it. We had quality products, just like they're replacing the flooring. The flooring I have in my apartment, I live here.
Miss Amina, I'm sorry, this is Lydia. You're running, your time's almost at 5 minutes. We appreciate your comments, but if you could kind of bring them to a close and then we'll comment. So
Okay, I'm sorry. So there's some other issues here. I'm just gonna name them. I won't go into detail because I don't have any more time. But there's a problem here with lack of transparency in the system that we have to use about our rent and our maintenance issues. We have also a problem with, sorry, I've turned the page. The other things I wrote. Oh, and we have cameras here, which I think are discriminatory because there's absolutely no crime rate here, no need for them. And then that was the last thing I'm going to say.
Okay. All right. Well, look, thank you.
Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. And I'd like to tell you that, we had a report. You may be aware of this, but we had a report from someone else last week, kind of talking about some concerns also with that complex. And Mr. Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we asked that staff look into that and kind of, investigate it and maybe get back with us with a report pretty soon and touch base with the Home Trust and our liaison, the Home Trust. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're setting up those meetings. Yes.
Okay. So we, and I don't know if it would be helpful this recording will help some too with some concerns, but if you want to, Ms. Mina, send along your remarks to our town clerk, then those can go to our manager and those could be part of the record as well. So.
Hello. Thank you.
All right.
So much.
We appreciate you being here. Now we have a couple quick comments here. Let's see. We have Barbara and then Randy.
So thank you, Ms. Amina, for coming in. And as the mayor said, we did have from someone else at the landings last week. And so I am the Community Home Trust liaison from the town council. And I'm sure Ms. Amina knows that. But I guess I'm sitting here wondering, we're saying that we'll give it to staff and see, what comes back and just like, what does that look like? And like, what does that mean, for Miss Makita, who came last week, and then Miss Amina here, as we give money to the Home Trust, through an agreement, but we as a jurisdiction, we're not involved in the day-to-day operations there. And so I'm just trying to figure out, think about what we could do to help without stepping over,
Right.
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yeah, sure do, Barbara. Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. But I want, folks in the landings, to feel heard. There's a reason why they're coming over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like screaming, right? And so, it's a little bit of, discomfort there and just kind of, you know what I mean? Because it's really not our purview, when it comes to like the operations over at the land, So I just kind of wanted to throw that in. I hope I didn't, but that's my view from Community Home Trust. But I said I want to help, but certainly, there are boundaries, between the town of Carrboro and the Community Home Trust.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I appreciate those comments. My thinking is, we're hearing from the residents about their concerns, and our staff is really good at, kind of fleshing out, interviewing people, talking to people, whatever, to kind of get back to us. And then I would think we would have a discussion and perhaps give you some of our thoughts. And then you as our liaison could relay some of those thoughts to the Home Trust. And ultimately you're right. We are one of the jurisdictions that gives money to the Home Trust. So I feel some responsibility for us to kind of, hear from our residents about what's going on. Kind of reminds me of OWASA in a way, right? Where we have a rep that kind of can pull forward what we think, but, ultimately it's a freestanding board, but we do have influence over them to the degree that we could, I guess. Let's go to Randy and then to Sammy.
Well, first I want to thank Adisha for coming in. I know when a resident has concerns about something and they bring it to their maintenance folks, or they bring it to their management office, they feel like, okay, it's going to be resolved. But to take the next giant step and come to town government, I know that takes it takes courage, and it takes certainty that, you feel that there's a real problem that needs to be addressed. So I want to thank you for that. I did want to ask Kadisha if you, I don't know if are you still here?
I'm here.
Okay, good. I wanted to ask you if the things that you enumerated, the examples that you gave, if you could send it to our manager, to our clerk and our manager through email, and list out the kinds of concerns that you had, and what the evidence and the impact. So when you gave examples such as what was happening with the awning or the appliances, I mean, these are good things to know. And I just want to underscore that, because this is community trust housing, quality of life should not be compromised. You should never be made to feel that, that your residence is going to be valued any less than anyone else in your neighborhood. And it hurts me to hear that, that the quality of life is not what you feel it should be, and not what it was when you're describing the gorgeous residence that you walked into when you first became a Landings resident. So with that said, if you could get that information to staff and Barbara, then we know that what we're talking about is is evidence of your concern and how it impacts you. Thank you, Keisha.
Thanks, Randy.
Well, thank you.
All right, let's go on to Sammy.
Ms. Amina, I'm so sorry about your situation and your neighbor's situation. I know that if you're coming to the council, it must be not a good situation. I'm sorry you're having to do that. I would like for, as town manager and staff, we're looking into information to include how much it is that we recently approved for the landing specifically. I understand the Home Trust is venturing into a new area, which is about rentals, and this is one of the places where they're doing that. And I think it's our responsibility, given the funding that we do, not through the shared formula, because that's for home ownership. This is different. That we get a good handle on that, because my understanding was that the landings needed significant improvements, and we provided significant funding. And if it's true that instead of improving, it's becoming less, I find it highly problematic, and we need to get a handle on how those funds are being used, not just for now, but for the future, and how we're going to potentially be asked to further fund making it better.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sammy. Good comments, because, Richard, as you have the fire hose of warning and everything going on in Carrboro, in recent years, we've helped out the Landings a lot, this new model, as we said, with the rentals, but it's been a little different than the other arrangement we've had with the purchase of housing over the years. So it'd be good for you to learn about that too. So, all right. But anyway, again, thank you, Ms. Amina. And we are all, I'm so sorry, Damon has his hand up. Yeah, Damon.
Yeah, just very quickly, I appreciate everyone's comments. And in addition to appreciating for being here and sharing her comments with us, I really appreciated what Barbara said about kind of noting that governance link between the town and the board of the Community Home Trust. And I think, Richard, to the extent that you're going to be pulling together a report for us, focusing on what can be helpful to us in sharing thoughts with Barbara as our liaison would be really important, because we do want to kind of be thoughtful about that role that Barbara plays for us on the Community Home Trust Board. And as I think Barbara correctly said, not to be seen to be stepping over that role when we're trying to be helpful. So, thank you. And Khadijah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Damon. All right. Again, thank you, Ms. Amina. You take care.
Thank you.
All right.
So, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
October 21st is our next CHT board meeting, if that's helpful, like as far as like getting information. It's October 21st is our next board meeting.
Okay.
If we're able to have, some information by then.
So, Mr. Manager, that's when the next Home Trust meeting is then. So, okay, great. Thank you for that. All right, Kathy, other speakers from the floor?
Yes, we have Shelley Welsh and Kevin Poinboff. I'll bring them over.
Shelley, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hey, y'all, good evening. Whoever wants to begin can go ahead.
Sure. So a couple months ago, a complaint was sent to the town council in reference to political signs that have been displayed at the Merritt properties. We addressed, and for those who are watching and maybe may see a video of this conference at another date, this has been an ongoing issue with the Merritts. We've addressed this with the town council through multiple complaints. Last week, we were here and had addressed the same issue because we've gotten no response from the town council about a violation of the land use ordinance and displaying political signs after 3 days. I think last week, Lydia, you were the one who said maybe the town manager was going to look into that and provide some feedback. So we're here tonight again to get that feedback and where we stand with that issue.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you, Kevin. So that precise issue, I know I discussed with Mr. Manager. Mr. Manager, do you want to give a response to that?
So town staff met with the town attorney last week, and we are putting together some information that we do want to bring back to council within the next week or so. I don't know if our attorney is available to speak, but the plan is to come back to the council next week with more information.
Nick, do you have anything else to offer about that particular question?
No, that's the plan.
Okay, so when I met with when I met with Richard near the end of last week, Richard and I discussed this, and I know then staff and the attorney had a meeting, and the attorney is preparing some information, y'all, to come back to us about the legal issue around that. That's my understanding. So, so that's the resolution of that issue, y'all, of how we're going to get our information back.
I'm a little confused because you wrote the LUO. The town council wrote the LUO. I just don't understand what's confusing exactly about that specific regulation in the LUO. So I'm just wondering what your question is that you're waiting for a report back from your attorney.
Yeah, I mean, even though I am an attorney, I know that we need to go to our attorney to have these kind of interpretations. And so I don't think it's quite as clear cut as perhaps it might look. And so I really don't want to expand on the legality of it until he can kind of research it and tell us about it. I think it's perhaps a little bit more than what it looks like. So, and that's, I don't know if Richard or Nick want to expand on that or not, but that's what I'm being told by our attorney. So.
I'm sure you are. All right, you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, unless Nick had a comment to make. It looks like he just.
Yeah, look, I mean, just to be clear about it, I mean, I'm working with the town staff to evaluate that. I appreciate the complaint. We have all the information about that. I've discussed it with the staff, discussed it with the manager, and we will be reporting back on this. And the town will have to decide whether there's a violation, and if so, what enforcement action to take. So we are working on the matter and treating it appropriately. That's all.
You are aware that the complaints have been coming for a couple of months. It's only when we came and screamed on the meeting that you got active with it. I mean, that's really part of what's so frustrating is you teach us how to treat you, and you are still unaware of it 3 years later. We can speak normally and usually do in our lives. We are sitting in our car in front of our house. My child is waiting inside because we have to do this every Tuesday. That's what's infuriating, that we have to come here and babysit because our emails are not enough. It's been 2 months and you ignore it until we do this. You have taught us how to treat you. So now we almost immediately go straight to yelling because that's when we get a response.
Let me just by way of just addressing that. I understand that you sent emails over the summer. Last week was our first meeting back. You told us it had not been addressed. We talked to our new town manager who talked to Nick. We're working on that particular complaint. Do you have another item that you want to bring up to us?
I do. And I have a comment about what you last said. You have a staff that works all through the year and they never responded to us. So about an hour and a half ago, we received an email from Marty, an email that was apparently sent on September 17th, addressing the main complaint that we made last week about the continued excavation in the northwest corner of the Merritt property. So we haven't had much time to prepare, which is pretty typical of the planning department to send us something 5 minutes before we need to come on the meeting. You all have been totally aware for 2 years now because you sent cease and desist. You sued the Merritts in Superior Court. You spent all of that money. Then you settled with the Merritts. Then you did not enforce your own settlement agreement. You allowed the Merritts to continue this digging, knowing that it was illegal, seeing the photos that we sent you, and it was not until September 9th that Marty had a conversation with the Merritt's new engineer regarding their letter that they sent August 30th, asking to dig up the area that you sued them over. And it took Marty from August 30th to September 9th to respond and say, oh, actually, that's the area we already sued your client over. No, you can't dig there. But maybe you could send a text amendment request. So my question to you, especially Nick, whose response in the midst of all of these emails was, this does not appear to be under the jurisdiction of the town of Carrboro. Nick filed the lawsuit. When you say, Lydia, which you did 2 years ago, we trust you, Bob, referring to Bob Hornick, who is Nick Herman's partner. That concerns me.
You're bumping up against your time limit. You're actually way over it. But
it's 2:29. It's 2:30.
I've only been talking. We're timing it ourselves. That concerns me that you make a statement. We trust you, Bob. Obviously, we want you to trust your attorneys, but they are not voted into office. You are. We expect that you act on your own volition and not mimic them, especially when Nick Herman is saying, oh, that's not under our jurisdiction, when he sued the Merritts over that.
Okay. Let me just respond very briefly to that. And I don't know if, I don't think Mr. Manager or Mr. Attorney necessarily wants to or has to, but I know last week when you came to speak to us, again, Mr. Manager and I, having our second meeting since he joined us, I asked him to kind of give us a recap of what's gone on the last couple of months so that everyone here is up to speed with what you're talking about. Some of these emails, some of us receive, some of these emails, a lot of us receive or don't receive. I'm looking at one today that you sent about a lot of this that I'm not even on. So Mr. Manager is going to be presenting a timeline and a discussion to all of us so we can kind of understand where we are with this so that we can address this, because this just doesn't work for you all to keep coming and talking to us every single week about
You're right.
a situation that, and I'm just going to keep going, about a situation that that does involve you, but it also involves the town with another private party. And so there's just a lot happening here. Has been a lot happening here in the last couple of years. Now, I don't know how much others want to say. I see Sammy has his hand up. I see Barbara has her hand up. Why don't you all speak? And then after that, Mr. Manager or Nick, if you want to chime in, feel free. But let's go ahead and go to Sammy. Sammy, can't hear you. Sorry.
Sorry. Like I mentioned with Miss Amina, it is problematic when someone has to come to us to talk about things. And Shelley has been doing this for far too long, and it's clear to me that they're not living in a good place with their neighbors. In other words, their neighbors is not following the law too often, and so I included in that report. It's not clear to me whether the report that Nick's putting up is just about the signs, or also including the violation of digging in the watershed, and I would hope that that's included. I'm honestly not so interested in the long history of it, except for the benefit to our town manager as background. But it's very clear to me that the merits are not good willing in much of this, and it's unfortunate that as a town we rely on citizens to complain so that we can thereafter enforce. So
That's right.
we've received a lot of complaints. The minimum we can do is to follow through and enforce our ordinances. And if it is the case that they have been digging in the watershed, then it's very inappropriate for town staff to facilitate making them continue to do that. But rather, we should have a recourse, which I assume we do. Otherwise, what's the point of having land use ordinances
Right.
Yes.
you can't enforce?
Okay, great. Thank you, Sammy. Let's go on to Barbara.
Yeah, and so I'm just following up. I started talking last week. I do agree with what I just heard from Councilmember Slade, and I can only imagine how I would feel, with emails, coming and not being answered, and waiting for an answer, and it's frustrating, and I know it's very triply frustrating for Shelley and Kevin, and we have to do better. And I know that Mr. White is trying to be brought up to speed. I understand that, and I understand there's a timeline coming. As soon as he's brought up to speed and has all the information. But I just, if there's an email, can somebody just say something? If an email comes through,
Yes.
I just feel like you could say, "Hey, we've received your email.
Yes.
We are, even if it's something as short and simple as that, I think that helps take the bite out instead of just the email floating out, in email land with no response." So I think that that's something that we can do, as we work together, all the information from Mr. White, and he comes forth with a timeline, that hopefully will help, resolve some of these issues, because I think everybody's tired, at this point. And nobody's more tired than Shelley and Kevin. And it's just time, for us to kind of move as much towards a resolution, as we can. So, that's it for me.
Thanks, Barbara. Damon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for Sammy and Barbara's comments. And Lydia, I appreciate the meetings you've been having with the new manager, trying to get kind of up to speed on what's been happening. As part of that work, Richard, I would be particularly interested in the legal settlement that was reached, and enforcement of breaches of that settlement. That seems like a pretty important thing for us to be staying on top of. And then second, I'm particularly interested in something that Barbara just raised, which is just kind of protocol around responding to residents and others who have issues to report. I know that the original email that was sent in a few months ago about the sign issue, for example, whatever the legal resolution of that may end up being, there was an initial response from staff to that saying that there would be follow-up, but as far as I could tell, there was never further follow-up. I think Richard, I think from my perspective, knowing that there is a protocol on the staff side for a response, just kind of laying out for folks what they can expect to hear back would be important, irrespective of what the ultimate resolution of any particular complaint is. because that's important for just, it's important for us to know that that's happening since we're not in it everyday weeks. So thank you again.
Thanks, Damon. And I think it was maybe Sammy that said, and I agree with this. I don't know that we need to have the entire history for the last 20 years or whatever. Damon reminded us that we've had this, settlement this within the last several months with the merits. Now there's some other stuff going on with that, but I'm interested in kind of what the current issues are, as we've heard, what the current issues are, how they're being handled. I think the other thing is, as I looked at an email from, I guess it was the one tonight, Shelley, you're talking about, like that's one that I think you emailed to a lot of people, and maybe half our board's on it, half of us aren't. So some of us, I think, don't get all the information sometimes, just kind of putting that out there. And also that maybe, Mr. Manager, we have a staff point person who can always be the kind of point of contact, at least to kind of keep some of this as it kind of continues to come in from Shelley and everyone. It's just kind of hard to keep straight sometimes, all of the communication that's coming from different places. And I know I'm not even on all of the emails, but I'm on part of them. So just wanted to put that out there. So, but as I understand it, and so we'll go ahead and move on to our next item. But as I understand it, Mr. Manager is going to get us back some answers to both of these issues. We think by next week. Is that right, Mr. Manager? Okay. All right. Very good. We appreciate that.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So Kathy, do we have any other folks here to speak? And if not, we can move on to our consent agenda.
I did have one person that sent a request. It was after the meeting started. I don't know their name. But if you are here to speak and you're in the audience, if you could raise your hand and I could bring you over. It was an email that came through just a little after 7.
Sorry, I don't see
anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I.
Let's move on to the consent agenda. Okay, Mr. Manager, the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. The first item. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item under the consent agenda is the approval of the minutes from the June 22nd, 2021 meeting. Item number 2 is the appointments to the Arts Commission. This is to make appointments to that commission. Item number 3 is the Economic Development Monthly Report. Item number 4 is the Police Monthly Report. Item number 5 is the Fire Department Monthly Report. Item number 6 is the Stormwater Utility Monthly Report. Item number 7 is conditional use permit minor modification request for Harris Distribution Facility at 308 Highway 54. The Town Council was asked to review the minor modification to the permit for the Harris Distribution to allow the wholesale sales use to the original conditional use permit, and town staff recommends approval of the request. Item number 8 is a request to cancel a previously set public hearing date for a conditional use permit to allow an office building at 1716 Smith Level Road. The town council is asked to cancel a previously set date of September 28, 2021 for the public hearing regarding consideration of a conditional use permit application for an office building at 1716 Smith Level Road, and the resolution is included as attachment A to cancel that hearing date. Item number 9 is a request to issue street closing permits for the annual Carrboro 10K road race and the Gallop and Gorge 8K road race. And this application was submitted by the Cardinal Track Club. Item number 10 is the Police Department Quarterly Equity Report, and that's the last item on our consent agenda. You're on mute, Mayor.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to get it unmuted. Okay, so I know already I want to pull 1 till next week. I know Sammy wanted to pull 3, 6, and 10, and Jackie wanted to pull 6 and 10. Are there any others to be pulled by anyone else? And if not, I could take a motion for 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9.
I'll move those items.
All right,
Second.
so motion by Randy's for those, and second, was that second you, Susan? Okay, so all in favor of those, say aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Damon?
Aye.
Okay, all right, very good. So we'll get one back next meeting. So we're on number 3. That's you, Sammy.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to express gratitude to John, including that table showing the parking breakdown as I was requesting before our last meeting. I would like to, as I requested then, also see how many town employees are currently parking in the downtown, if that could be shared at some point soon. And then also the Manager Andrew set up a parking fund within our budget. And I assume might be readily available information that staff is keeping track of annual costs for leases and recurring costs and upfront costs for leases. If that information could be forwarded too, I'd much appreciated it. And lastly, I had the opportunity to meet with the parking consultants, and I very much encouraged that our transportation planner work with them as John is too, as parking is a transportation issue. The reason I say this is as they asked me many questions that I was surprised they didn't already know, and maybe it's a function of where they are in the process, but I just wanted to make sure Zach's in the loop with their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Great, good comment, Sammy. Would you like to move the item, Damon?
Just wanted to, I'll second that motion from Sammy, and just in seconding it, just note that Sammy, I'm pretty sure you were the first person they talked to, so that might have accounted for some of the what you were getting from them. I think I spoke to them right after you did.
Okay,
right,
good.
Very good.
Yeah, so with those comments, I'll move the item.
Thanks, Sammy. Okay, so motion by Sammy, second by Damon. All in favor, say aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Susan? Me? Aye. Damon?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Okay, the next one is number 6. And so Jackie and Sammy pulled this. Jackie, you want to go first? Your hand's up anyway. So.
Thank you. I'm looking at the report on item, it's the Rain Ready follow-up study. And they're talking under the active status that that Sungate has completed an engineering assessment of the catchment between Hillsborough and West Main because it has so many drainage issues that are impacting flooding along Tom's Creek, and the engineering work is underway for the infrastructure improvements. Do we have any idea when that will happen, or when we will actually see some construction happening there, some improvements happening? It's the
So, Mr. Manager and or Kathy, is there a staff member that can you pull over to answer that?
If not, we could just if we could just get that information. I know there are a lot of people who are so anxious about flooding there, and this is going to be not a fix-all, but it's certainly a step towards addressing that.
Yeah.
So we could get the implementation going would be great. And I would encourage everybody, both watching and here, to make sure you do a deep dive into the stormwater report, because there's an awful lot going on that's actually addressing some of the issues that we're also concerned about. So
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Thanks for that. It looks like maybe Randy's here now. Randy Dodd.
thank you, Randy. Do you know when
Harris?
something will happen there?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. If I'm understanding the question correctly, it's about the work at High and West Main Street. Sungate is working on the preliminary engineering. The latest communication from, I think it was Friday, was that we should be getting the 60% plans for that work, and hopefully, move through the final design work pretty quickly, and then move forward with preparing construction documents and bidding as quickly as we can. So everything's moving forward with that work.
Randy, could you, for those of us that are lay people, tell us a little bit about what that project will be and what we hope to accomplish from it?
Yeah, so the runoff running down High Street runs on both sides of the street, from Hillsborough Street towards Main Street. And then just before it gets to Goldston Avenue, the water on both sides gets diverted, so it's just running on one side and gets channeled to go down along Goldston Avenue, where from there downhill, it's along a gravel road with a very narrow right-of-way, and it's just had a history of erosion problems and just substandard or not as ideal as desired situation. And so what we're doing is we're taking the water from the other side of the road across from Goldston and diverting it out to Main Street. So it's going to be reducing the total volume of water running down Goldston and impacting along Goldston and places downstream, so that and we went through as part of the conceptual planning getting NCDOT approval for this so we could put it into their system along West Main Street.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Randy. We appreciate that. So that was your question, Jackie? All right. And then Sammy, you had a comment too about number 6.
Yes. At our last meeting before the summer break, or maybe it wasn't then. Anyways, before the summer break, I requested more information about the possibility of putting up the money from the town for the 2 houses that are waiting for the federal bailout of their properties. As we know, it is very stressful and perhaps even lethal to be in those homes. And I feel it's the responsibility of us as a town to maximize what opportunities there may be to make sure people aren't living in that kind of situation. So I just wanted to get a sense, Mr. Manager, if that is being looked at, or maybe it's a question for Nick, or both, where we are with that.
Just by way of me quickly commenting before we hear from Mr. Manager or Nick, I remember you bringing that up because it was the night of the night after Tim died, I think. And I remember you expressing that thought, and I remember me saying, I'm not sure if legally we can do that. But anyway, I do recall you asking the manager and or attorney to kind of respond on that. So, Mr. Manager, I'm not sure if that's something that you're aware of or that's on your plate, and or if Nick is.
Tammy, focus me in on the question that you're asking here.
So we have 2 properties that are waiting for some hurricane relief funding to purchase those properties from the owners, and they've just been waiting for years for a response. And the question is, one of to what degree the town could buy that property and get remunerated or not, depending on whether those federal funds come through.
Yeah, here's the answer to that. I've actually talked with Randy Dodd and our Public Works Director about the potential for doing that if we can show that that purchase will benefit the public at large in connection with stormwater control. In other words, and I had floated that idea maybe as much as a year ago so Randy and Joe are aware of that, and I am open to that suggestion.
Great. I'm glad to hear it's been a year. Maybe there's been some movement on it. I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, and just so you know, I mean, of course, what was going on in the interim was all of these efforts to have some kind of buyout through, other governmental funding.
Right.
That's what put the brakes on this
Yeah.
alternative idea.
So I think, thank you, Nick, for saying that, because that public purpose, that reminded me that would be the way it could be done, would be if it could benefit the community in some way, like stormwater. So I think, Mr. Manager, a couple of things then. One is, the status of these FEMA grants we've asked for, which, as Sammy said, has been going on for years and years. We had to resubmit it, and I know we're still waiting on hearing something. It's certainly about these two properties. But then number two, is there some way, maybe, maybe we can stand in the shoes of them if we bought them out, and then when the FEMA money did come in, maybe the town could end up getting that money. I'm not sure how that would work, but that would be advisable, I would think, if it were able to be worked out. But that may be another thing that you need to get caught up to speed on. But that's, in particular, these two properties are two that we've been waiting to try to get money for them to either be bought out by FEMA or be, I think, perhaps lifted. We've had some others that have been successful, but these are two that are still pretty bad. They're in the Bardal neighborhood. And that's really what Sammy's talking about. So go ahead, Sammy.
I've got one more thing. On my street, there was a fill-in of the swales, as y'all may have seen the email I sent to Mr. Manager. And I just wanted to make sure that the Stormwater Commission is thinking through the value of swales. And I know that if it were a private entity, we would have required engineering, because this happened recently, just a year ago, where there was a home who had to justify the filling in of their swales, and they had to show a very complex system. And I want to make sure that the standards that we hold for private citizens are ones that we as a town are following ourselves. I'm afraid that we may have filled it in while there is good justification for it. The fire department needs a place to pull off. I want to make sure that we proceed, making sure that we're also addressing these other concerns. As we just heard from Jackie's prompt, the High Street diversion is going to help downstream, and Dillard contributes to what that project is trying to solve. We don't want to be doing something good over here and then messing something up over here. So all that to say, there could be a better protocol for staff in making sure that our standards are aligned with what it is that we would have required a private citizen to do the equivalent of what happened.
All right.
I'd like to, when the time comes, I'd like to make the motion and include those two requests.
Okay, why don't you articulate? I know we have a couple of other folks here with their hands up. Well, let's hear what Randy and Susan have to say, and we'll come back to you to make the motion. So let's go to Randy and then Susan.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Sammy, I was glad you brought this up, because back in 2016, when the assessment on the property did not meet the value, and we weren't able to move forward, the FEMA assessor didn't find the value at the matched, and then there was this $10,000 difference. And we thought, well, maybe we could make up that $10,000. One of the things that I proposed at the time was to see if the town could make the purchase of the land and create a wetland park there. And that was then. And it sounds like this is a good opportunity to do just that. If in fact, Nick and the council feel like the public purpose could be met with, a neighborhood, a wetland restoration park. So I'm putting that out there because that did come up before. I brought it up then, and it was when we were trying to grapple with, how do we move forth when, when it was denied, when essentially the the first request was denied. So I'm underscoring that. Additionally, I just wanted to say that there's one statement in the report having to do with, let's see, it's on, no, I don't, this is not numbered. Okay, it's under number 3, FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program Letters of Interest, Acquisition and Elevation. At the bottom of the page, right before the web link under fiscal and staffing considerations, it says there would be significant staff impact to administer the grant funds. So I would just want to know, Mr. Manager, what is a potential game plan so that, should funds be awarded, we would stand ready, to act.
So, so again, it sounds like Randy kind of expanding on Sammy's notion of, is there some legal way for us to, well, certainly once there was a grant agreement, it seems like the town can move forward incurring costs and they would get reimbursed. But even if it doesn't work out with the grants, the other question that was raised is, would the town legally, would they be able to purchase it just outright in some way for a wetlands or whatever, and not just the one property? The question, I think, is about purchasing one property. The other one, I guess, is elevation. I don't know that we purchased that one. That's different. That's on James Street.
Yeah, I'm talking about 160.
All right, so let's so that again,
the other part of my question had to do with staffing and the impact to staff, and I'd like Mr. Manager to look at that so that should granting go forward and be approved, a game plan is in place to be able to administer and have the staffing resources to do so.
Yeah, right. Because you're right, Randy. That last sentence does indicate there would be a significant staff impact to administer the grant funds. Okay. All right. So let's go to Susan.
Yes, thank you. I actually had a question on this public purpose about the wetlands, and my question's been answered, so I'm good to go. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Sammy, why don't you go ahead and make your motion and articulate your two
Sure.
parts of it.
So I'll move the item with 2 requests. One is to look into how the town may be able to, through 2 methods, 1, public purpose, or 2, the mayor's stand-in shoes version, cover for and purchase these houses until the federal funds come through. If there's a way to do that, for staff to look into that. And the second request is to have staff make sure that we're following the same process that we require of public citizens when they want to fill in swales, and that we request of the Stormwater Utility Commission to assess the value of swales and make sure that whatever it is that replaces them is as good or better than the swales.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sammy. So that's Sammy's motion. Is there a second? Susan? All right. So Susan seconded it.
But I like to amend that, if I make a friendly amendment.
What would that be?
Well, as you pointed out, the purchase would be for 116 Carroll. So right. I think we need to distinguish, because both houses, one house is to raise the elevation. So I think that it needs to be specified that it's 116 Carroll that we're talking about public purpose.
The purchasing would be 116, Sammy, not both of them, because the other one's
sure. Thanks for that clarification.
And additionally, do we want to add to have the manager look into the staffing and administration of the grant? Is that something else we want to have documented?
I'm not sure what that is exactly.
I think that's, well, Randy, you're just kind of making the point to that, but unfortunately, if we do get the grants, that's just going to be something that will be there, I think. I mean, I don't know, Mr. Manager can tell us what that would be or not, but I think if we were able to get the grants or whatever, that would be something that would come forward anyway, so.
Okay. As long as we're all clear, because I don't want us to find ourselves in a situation where we have grant money and we don't have a game plan for staff.
Got it. And the other thing is, as this doesn't need to be a part of the motion, but I'm just curious if we know anything, if we've gotten any update lately about these grants at all. How does that play into this whole decision anyway? So, okay, so motion by Sammy with the amendment by Randy. Is there any other discussion? Damon, I saw your hand up. Are you good?
Well, I just, I'm fine voting for this motion and getting this information and advice from the manager and the attorney. I would hope that information and advice from both the manager and the attorney will be placed in the context of and squared with previous advice from the attorney on this topic, so that we can have a full picture. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great. Appreciate that. All right. So it sounds like we'll have information for further discussion too. So, all right. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
And Sammy?
Aye.
Okay. All right. And then our last item on the consent agenda to chat about is number 10. And we have Jackie and then Sammy on that one too. I can't hear you, Jackie.
I was curious with the report, and particularly in looking at let me pull it up here. The one that I found most interesting was equipment and regulatory. And that to me also seems like the one that's most what's the word I'm looking for?
Innocuous.
It's the one that's most could be kind of arbitrary.
Right.
It's the one that's left up the most to an officer's discretion.
Perfect.
And it's also the one in what I read, and no, not in Carrboro, but in other municipalities, it's the one that most often can lead to into pretty confrontational situations. So it's somebody's headlights out. Is there something going on where maybe even not consciously, but are there times when a headlight that's out on an old car is going to make it more likely that the person will get pulled than if the headlight's out, on a 2021 Lexus or something? But the numbers there I found most. So equipment and regulatory, there was a total of 97 in the past, in this quarter. 34 of those were for where the driver was Black, which is a really high percentage when you look at population percentage. 50 of them were white, which is kind of a low percentage when you look at the population percentage. So because those are the issues that I've read and I've seen are most likely to lead to a confrontation, and are most likely, I think, to reflect bias, unconscious or conscious. So I just kind of wanted to pull that one out. I'm not sure what the response is, except I want to say we see this. And in saying we see this, I'm asking that the chief also see it. And I certainly trust and admire our chief, but I want him to see it and maybe have a conversation about how do you decide? Because I know that for some minor things, and these are minor things, that based on what he told us a couple weeks ago, that those are the things that kind of a newbie might be most likely to do, because they're trying to show that they're out there and they're doing it. But I mean, there were several other things here, but I found that disturbing, and I would like a response from the chief.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. And so Kathy, I know Chief's in the waiting room. I don't know if he wants to come over and chat about that particular question or not, or if he perhaps even wants to come over and hear what other people have to say, and then maybe respond if he wants to, or get some information back to us. So maybe we can pull him on in here before we go ahead and go on to Sammy, and then Barbara, and then Susan. Let's see. There's Chief. Hey, Chief ATAC, how you doing?
Hey, sorry, I put you in that weird join as a panelist kind of vacuum. I'm just here for a second. I apologize. So I did hear Councilmember Gift's comment, and I know there's some other comments, and I would love to hear them, because I've got a response to some of that, and I'll just say that, you know, I also see it, and I remember our last meeting where we discussed this, and we had a supervisors meeting that was either that week or the next week, and we specifically discussed this. So throw at me what you got, and then I'll be happy to respond. And if I don't know the answer tonight, I'll find out. And if there's a better time to discuss the concepts in general, because I think some of them are a bit amorphous, then I certainly will do that as well.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you. All right, so we have then Sammy, and then Barbara, and then Susan with some comments. But go ahead, Sammy.
Yes, thank you. I just want to thank you, Chief. I appreciate the reflection of the weighted population, the demographics of who drives through Carrboro. That's very helpful. And a lot of those items stick out because of that still. So as Jackie correctly pointed out, equipment and regulatory, it's twice as many blacks get stopped as whites. And then also through enforcement action, it's up to 1.5 to 2 times more that blacks are caught up in that. So very problematic. And then and whites are under the estimated weighted population. So I think it behooves us to take action and do something about it. And I totally agree with Jackie. The equipment regulatory is an area that other places, such as like Lansing, they recently decided to not enforce regulatory and equipment. And perhaps they had some items that were, but a lot of them were knocked off. It's not just a matter of increasing confrontation. It's a matter of decreasing people who are historically disenfranchised in participating in the justice system unnecessarily. It's very costly, not just monetarily, but in time and soul sucking. So I would like for us to request that our chief look into what that would look like and the possibility of not doing as much equipment and regulatory stops.
All right, thank you, Sammy. We'll hear from the others here before Chief can respond. So we'll go to Barbara and then to Susan.
Yeah, so I appreciate Councilmember Gibson's flag carrying the water, so I wouldn't have to about the equipment regulatory and the disparities. I certainly appreciate the data. I'm not going to repeat anything they've said. I'm in total agreement with that, with what they've said. But I will say I appreciate the data, but I think periodically, Chief ATAC, it would behoove you to, come in and provide interpretation, some kind of summary, with the data. I think that's always good, versus, just having the data and like have at it. I mean, and, maybe, some of these comments and questions could have, been addressed, in your presentation. So I know for me, I would appreciate it if you would come in periodically and just talk a little bit about the data.
Yep, definitely.
Barbara, great comment. And I think that this report probably just got filed in with the other reports. Like I know there's another police report too, but I agree. We do have that occasional conversation, and especially with our new chief, we have enjoyed talking with him, and I think it's a great idea. All right, let's go on to Susan and then Damon.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you. It's good to see you this evening, Chief ATAC. I actually want to just sort of come behind all the other comments that have been made. I really appreciate what everybody has been saying here, and I'm going to just expand on it a tiny bit. I looked at probable cause searches, stop rates, and then the equipment regulatory violations. And it was actually pretty consistent with each of those different areas that whites and Asians were very underrepresented relative to their population. Hispanics were slightly overrepresented, and Blacks were very overrepresented. And so just sort of picking up on the comments of my colleagues, we all know this is something that, you all are working on very, very, very hard. And as we move forward with the reporting, if there can be, I don't know how to do it, and I trust that you'll do a great job of it, but how can we measure the success in a way that it will be really easy for us to, maybe not get too bogged down in the numbers, but a way that we can be kind of measuring success and see how we're doing in terms of getting toward a more bias-free policing. So I just wanted to throw that out to you, and we'll look forward to that reporting as we move down the road.
Great. Thank you, Susan. And now we'll move on to Damon. And it might be that after we hear that, we hear some general comments from Chief ETAC, but I do think it might be good to have him come back on a future agenda soon and talk about this more in depth. But let's go ahead and go to Damon.
Yeah, thanks. I won't, I'll be brief and not really repeat what's been said. I think, Jackie raised a good observation about the data, and others' comments were certainly good at backing that up. On the specific issue of regulatory and equipment related stops, as Chief ATAC knows, this is something that a few years ago, the department, the leadership made a sort of a directive to de-emphasize those types of stops. And so this is a conversation that we have had with the chief before, with the previous chief before, and has been on the radar of the leadership in the police department for some time. And so I guess I would, just echo my colleagues' comments and concerns about perhaps taking another look at that de-emphasis, given that there has, we always have new police officers in the department, and needing reminders about where the priorities are. That's one of a number of things that were de-emphasized when it comes to law enforcement in Carrboro, and just keeping tabs on that is important, as well as keeping tabs on the data. So I appreciate the report, Chief. I wanted to just make one other comment. Sammy, you raised in an email before the meeting about the status of the Community Safety Task Force, which we of course established in part to address some of these kinds of questions and be creative about solutions. We do have several applicants for the task force, which is really great to see. One of the things that we're working hard to do is increase the diversity of that applicant pool. I have been making some phone calls and twisting some arms, and I have a little bit more twisting to do, but I think that will be on an agenda for appointments in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Damon. Thanks for that. Sammy, do you want to speak again before we go to Chief?
Just when the time comes, I'd like to move the item requesting that Chief come back with a plan for how to no longer initiate traffic stops for equipment and regulatory.
All right, let's hear. So we'll have you make a motion, but let's hear if Chief ATAC has anything he wants to respond to about all those comments.
Just a couple of comments. First off, from Q1 to Q2, we went from 804 total traffic stops to 375. So we dropped over 50% across the board in terms of traffic stops. Specifically with equipment and regulatory traffic stops, we went from 250, if I can read my writing, it's 253, I believe, in Q1 to 97 in Q2. So if I did the math right, that's a 61% drop in equipment and regulatory. So is that a step in the right direction? Yes. And I think your comments, especially about the challenge of equipment and regulatory and what does all of this mean, I think is key. It's got me thinking about, can we just cover what the type of stops are classified as and what is the point of them? Because I think one of the challenges is when I was an officer and I saw a car with one headlight or with one brake light, I would want to stop that person. Hey, what's up? Do you know your headlight's out? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you do. Sometimes it's a very good conversation. But I also know there's concern that those could be where an officer is just picking on somebody. And a lot of it is going to be, can people afford to fix their cars, right? Especially in the last 1.5 to 2 years, right? A car is an expensive thing to fix. And so there's a challenge there when it comes to socioeconomic status, and it may manifest in the numbers disproportionately, which I think is a lot of what we're seeing. So the reduction of harm, the reduction of maybe causing someone who can't fix their car already to then have an expensive ticket. I think these are good concepts to think about, because I think we don't want to be out there. We don't want to be representatives of the police department. We don't want to be representatives of the town out there just kind of giving someone a ticket when they're already having, a tough time keeping their car up to snuff. So I think these are good conversations. And I think the concept that has been in my head for a number of years is harm reduction. So, if we're looking at this as a concept, I think that's good. And I think this community safety task force to bring perspectives to it, I think is going to be key in building a model, a better mousetrap, a better model, whatever you want to call it going forward. In terms of just talking about the data from this quarter, we talk about how numbers manifest outside of what we even if we take the composite population, that can be a challenge. So I noticed in this quarter, 34% of our stops for speeding were of Black drivers. And so we're manifesting a disproportionate there as well. Stoplights were just under 30%, and safety was 26%. And so, it's tough, especially when the numbers get smaller, because each number has more impact on the total percentage. And so, this is probably outside my expertise and understanding how that number is, but the smaller the numbers, the more impactful they are. But to the main point of, we want to make sure we're doing things right, I think that's critical. So, if there's a date, I'd be happy to come back and just talk about what these concepts mean in terms of stops, and what goes through an officer's mind in those occasions. I wish, if COVID would ever go away, I would like you to ride along with some of our officers and see kind of how that's conducted firsthand. I really wish we could share body-worn camera footage and in-car camera footage with you just easily, because I think you'll see a lot of our officers are doing a lot of good things out there in their interactions with people, and they're not being badge heavy, but it's still sometimes the manifestation in the numbers and the demographics are troublesome.
Yeah, Chief, thank you for those comments. And I really appreciate you kind of reminding us where we were, like first quarter and then now, and then second quarter. And so I might suggest too, so this is the second quarter report. So third quarter, I'm assuming, ends at the end of September.
Right.
So it might be that when that report is ready for us, and I don't know how long it takes you, maybe a month and a half, 2 months, but maybe that could be the time, y'all. What do you think when that next equity report comes to us? That'd be on the agenda, and then we can talk with the chief then, because there'll be one coming after this third quarter. So
Right.
I think that kind of seems to make sense. When you have that quarterly report, you can do that check-in. Jackie, I see your hands up.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to second the motion if I could add that we would like to have data included in that response and a matrix, and to get that fairly regularly. I think it's real important. And I would also like to know more about the cost. I don't think people realize the cost of getting pulled. The cost, if we could get an idea of what does that actually cost somebody, in terms of going to court, maybe having to get a lawyer, missing work, and getting the car fixed. So I don't expect that we can get an exact number on that, but I want us to really look at it. I was talking to somebody the other day who had gotten a DWI, and he had just gotten his ankle bracelet off. And the whole experience had cost him $7,000. And he was lucky that he had, parents that backed him up. But a lot of people don't. And it was his first DWI. And it cost him $7,000. So I think, yes, we have to look at the whole cost. So what does getting pulled for a regulatory or an equipment failure, do we really know the true cost of that? So I'll second Sammy's motion if we can get that information too.
Okay, so just by way of reminder then, just let's be clear what the motion is. So Sammy, you want to state it again?
Yes, the motion is for the chief to come back with information about the cost of these infraction of equipment and regulatory stops, and for a plan or a policy on how to no longer initiate traffic stops for equipment and regulatory.
Okay, so.
And included it, in my second, I wanted to have, more data, a matrix on how we would measure the success of that.
How we would measure the success of implementation of that. Is that what you're saying? Okay, and so Chief, are you clear about what's being asked with that?
I've jotted it down and I'll check with Kathy because she tends to write better than I do. But yes, if I have any questions, I'll reach out. Thank you.
And Mr. Manager, you good with that? You understand what's being asked here in this motion and second?
I do, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and also along with that, Sammy, you're also moving the report, right?
Yes.
Okay, so motion by Sammy, second by Jackie. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye. Am I on? Aye.
Me, aye. Susan?
I also saying we appreciate you, Chief ATAC, and your police department.
Jackie?
Aye, and I'll second what Susan said.
Damon?
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, and then Sammy?
Aye, thanks,
And
Chief.
Barbara?
Aye, and Chief ATAC, all right, it come with the territory. Here, big boy. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We
Keep talking to me.
appreciate
I need it. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, Mr. Manager, on to other items. Sorry, I can't hear you. There you go.
Yes, there I am. So on the other matters, we have an update on the Carrboro Connects comprehensive plan process and request to set a public hearing. The purpose of this item is to provide the town council an update on the comprehensive planning process, an opportunity to set a public hearing for review of the draft plan on Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. And Trish McGuire, our plan director, is gonna open this up and then turn over to the consultant.
Sorry, the names moved around when I was bringing people over, so I might have brought the wrong person over, but Trish and Scott Goldstein should be here.
Scott's here, still waiting on Trish.
She raised her hand.
Yeah, so Trish and everyone, I don't know exactly what's going on, but I'm going through all of the motions here and it's not bringing her over. Let me see if I can just click allow to talk instead of promote to panelist.
And do you want me to make me a co-host and see if I can pull her over?
Yeah, I'll do that as well.
Kathy, can you also bring over Francesca Salinger?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's also not working. So, Mayor, I'm going to make you co-host and see if it works for you.
All right, I think it should be working. Let's see if that. It gave me the option and I did it.
I see all three of them here with us.
I've got an audio, if you can hear me.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think everyone's in now. So we can see, if you want to turn on your video, we can hear you and see you. You're all three over here now.
I don't know if Trish can turn her video on because it only allowed me to give her permission to talk. So it's still not actually bringing her over. Oh, maybe it did. I think it just did. Sorry about that, y'all.
Yeah, I think it must have been a quirk, but I think, yeah, there we go. There she is. You kind of faded in. It was kind of like a movie or something. Okay. All right, go ahead, Trish.
Okay, thank you so much, and sorry for the delay. Good evening. So I'm pleased to be here with Scott Goldstein and Francie Salinger from TESCA. Scott's our lead on the consultant team, which is made up of TESCA Incorporated, Teresa Lockamy Consulting, and the Center for Neighborhood Technology. They've been a fantastic team to work with this past more than a year. So I just want to make a few comments before we provide you a few slides. The council's decision on March 7th, 2020 was really eventful. And that's the evening you made the decision to direct the manager to negotiate a contract with TESCA for this project. I know you all vividly remember the next few days of that week as the COVID-19 emergency was declared on March 10th, and really everything flipped upside down in our lives and the lives of so many others. Last week, I was reminded how 20 years ago, the town's new vision for downtown Carrboro, and some of you may remember this as well, the community charrette that we had spent months planning coincided with the terrorist attacks on 9/11. So I recall, just as I heard the news, the media postings of others about that whole experience, I recalled the decision that was made that week to move forward with the event, not knowing if all of the consultant team would be able to come into town, who would be able to make it, what would happen. This is all while our lives were very different as a result of 9/11. We could know, it was so quiet here. There were no planes flying over. Every day was just really different. A really beautiful September. But anyway, I recalled how we had a tremendous turnout for that charrette, just really great community involvement, and just the level of commitment and concern and passion that was in the voices of people who participated in that whole process. So last year we moved into this project and really into uncharted waters. By the time we signed the contract with Tesca a few months after March, it took us a while to figure out the scope of work, actually, because we weren't certain how long were we going to be in lockdown. What was this going to actually look like and mean? This tremendous, significant adjustment from in-person to virtual engagement, and to try and plan a comprehensive plan that the town had never undertaken on this scale, magnitude in this manner was just, it was pretty much a pretty big challenge, essentially. And I'd say that as occurred in 2001 and this year, these planning processes have allowed us to really given us the occasion to consider the present and envision the future together. So, it has been a really amazing process. And with your support, which has been amazing, your involvement and that of over 1,500 others to date, and Francie can tell us the exact number, we've made great progress. So you've seen in the agenda materials that the majority of the preliminary draft plan is pulled together and presented for you on the project website and for the community. It's available for discussions and questions and comments and feedback. And Scott's going to run through a brief presentation just as similar to the ones you've seen before, most recently in June, on our efforts, the project status and the draft plan. We really look forward to hearing from you tonight what your initial thoughts are. We do have a work session scheduled in a couple of weeks once you've had a little bit more time to read through and think about what's in front of you and dig in, talk more extensively. As the shift to a virtual, you talked about this when you heard about the events, we did decide to shift to a virtual open house tomorrow. And so we will be looking for a few other ways to engage with the community, especially to garner some feedback about some recreation parks, cultural resources, projects, and services. That was one of our hopes at the open house, which we will be doing virtually tomorrow, but we may need to do a little bit more of that as well. We're going to be sharing the preliminary draft with advisory boards as well for their review in October, so that we can pull together your comments and theirs and as of the community, anyone who wants to participate, so we build this plan together. Thursday night, we are going to share with the task force what we hear from you tonight and what we hear from the community tomorrow. And we'll begin the conversation with them about prioritizing and implementing some of the projects in the plan. So we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. And and Scott, I know, will give a great description of how he sees this place where we are in the planning process. We do have two, so I'm going to hold off and let him do that. We have two action items in your packet this evening. The first is a resolution setting a public hearing for November 16th. And then the second one is a resolution of appreciation for the task force. So we wanted to be able to share with them. You guys have all done this in person at the meetings you've attended. And we really, again, that's part of our amazement and appreciation for you, for your being so supportive, your creativity and passion and leadership. But we do have a resolution that recognizes their work and their commitment, asks them to extend their participation for a little bit longer than we have kind of scheduled to date. And then just notes that we expect their formal participation would continue until the adoption of the plan, which we anticipate right now to be sometime in the spring, maybe in March. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, and thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Trish, and thank all of you. It's been a pleasure getting to know all of you. Wish we could have done more of this in person. Was certainly expecting to be in Carrboro right now, but we need to keep the momentum going. We've had a lot of input and community involvement, and it's very important to keep that engagement going. And so it's very exciting to get to this part in the process. I think this is the fourth time I've visited with you at the town council, and I said the first time, and I really mean it, you invited us into your community, and we appreciate that opportunity. As Trish said, we can. Francie's actually going to go over some of the numbers, but we've tried. It's not just about the numbers; it's about really trying to create an inclusive process. So we started, as Trish said, working on the scope in April. By June, we were in full gear. We spent that summer really coming up to speed. You've done a lot of planning. This is not a first. Well, it's the first comprehensive plan. You've done many leading edge plans over the years. So it's very important to educate the task force of all the work that would be done and put it in a way that could be accessible to the whole community of having all these documents together. We've had 2 large community meetings. We're going to have a third open house tomorrow night. Unfortunately, it's the weather. We think we're going to get better attendance online since we're used to doing that and brave storms tomorrow. But we've supplemented this all the way. So through interviews, focus groups, and going out to meeting with organizations, all of you have come into different meetings. We've tried to use a variety of ways to get out to the community to get input, because not everyone's involved in the town. So people might be involved in the schools or in another organization, the Art Center. So it's important to get everyone involved in the community. We're at a pivotal point now. Obviously, we posted. There was an earlier draft this summer that the task force reviewed. We had a couple extensive editorial sessions, but the draft that went up on Friday is the first time it's shared with the whole community. So we're really looking forward to getting feedback on that. There's 2 foundations and 7 planning elements. The 2 foundations are race and equity and climate action. And these are fundamental to every part of the plan. Rather than have a separate chapter about race and equity, there's a lens of advancing race and equity goals of the town that everybody has an opportunity throughout all of the actions, projects, and strategies. And this is hard work to do. We thank the town for supporting the CARE training, first for staff, then the task force. We were able to participate as well as helping to author this. We needed to be trained as well. And there's always more work to be done. But we do think that the task force has worked hard to make sure that there's a lens of advancing racial and equity goals throughout the entire plan. The second foundation, of course, is climate action. You have a recently adopted community climate action plan and an energy and climate action plan. Our recommendation when we get to that point, working with you, is actually to adopt those as part of the comprehensive plan as well. So some of those action items are summarized in the comprehensive plan, but for them to all be parallel documents to have the strength of underpinning land use decisions, those are critical plans. And what this comprehensive plan does is advance even further by taking all of the other actions around land use and affordable housing and energy and transportation to further those climate action goals of, for example, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80%. So I think that this new draft comprehensive plan gives a wider variety of tools to implement that metric that you've established for the community as well as for the town. So that's very exciting. I'm going to turn it over to Francie to walk us through a few slides about engagement.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having us here tonight, everyone. So, obviously operating within the confines of the pandemic, we have been doing that throughout the process. So it's been really important to us to have a whole menu of engagement techniques and try to reach folks in as many ways as we possibly can. So that included in-person pop-up events this past June, which you've heard about. We had 7 task force meetings, 2 highly interactive online community workshops. We did over 60 stakeholder interviews. We have a website that has been viewed over 4,500 times now. We had 2 Facebook Live events, and several, a whole plethora of ways that we've gotten the word out, including a town-wide mailing, social media, banners hung around town, handouts at food distribution events, branded t-shirts, participation in parades. So we've tried every way to let the community know about Carrboro Connects. Just some preliminary takeaways to share here. As guided by all of you, we have really tried to reach out and be representative of all of Carrboro. So that's including starting with and working with a very diverse task force. They are diverse racially, ethnically, in terms of those who have been involved with the town for years and those who are newer to town involvement, youth. So the task force has been really wonderful and representative of the different voices that we have in town. Many of our materials have been bilingual and some even trilingual, featuring Burmese. 2 Facebook Live events were held to try and reach specific populations. One was with El Centro, so that was held entirely in Spanish and was a great success. And then another was with the Refugee Community Partnership to reach the community from Burma. So all of these different forms of interactions have been recorded, documented, and then we've taken that engagement input, analyzed it, and that is what's directly informed the strategies and projects that you'll be hearing about tonight. These are just some of the stats from our really fun pop-up events that we were lucky enough to do in person back in June in Carrboro. We intentionally held these all across town in different locations: Carrboro Plaza, Rogers Road, the Farmers Market, South Green, and MLK Junior Park. And we heard from children and seniors and longtime residents and newer folks to Carrboro, and learned a lot about what these people loved and want to improve in their community.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. The plan is available. There is going to be a detailed work session with all of you for more detailed review, but just an overview, starting with affordable housing. Really the goal here is to expand the number of units for homeowners earning up to 80% of AMI, for renters up to 60% with a special emphasis of up to 30% of AMI. So really trying to reach the hard to reach population, diversifying the types of housing. And I'll make a side note here. When you go through the plan, a lot of these ideas that came up through the various committees, task forces, advisory boards were purposefully, were similar across these. And so we had actually a nice kind of thing is that we had a lot of duplication through the plan. So we've tried to remove that duplication in the new version. So at the end of each chapter, you'll see additional ideas in other chapters. So for example, the land use changes regarding affordable housing are not talked about in the affordable housing chapter. They're in the land use chapter. So I just want to, as you review things and you think that things are missing, it may be just in another area of the plan in order to reduce duplication. That's why we added that key at the end of each chapter. So that's an example of that. Maintain improving naturally occurring affordable housing. You're a booming economic region. I know that that's great to have additional jobs and income for those, but it also puts pressure on the housing market. So there's a lot of, I think, innovative ideas in the plan to try to work on that issue. And then a public education campaign and exploration of how to expand the resources. The town has a dedicated source of funding for affordable housing, which is quite rare for a town your size. And the plan looks at opportunities to build on that. In terms of climate action and environment, a lot of this was really trying to lift up policies that have been developed in the recent plans. And then, as I said before, try to broaden that out to other areas and tools to advance those metrics to reduce per capita greenhouse gas emissions, really how to target lower income residents and small businesses to participate in these programs, conserve and restore watersheds and ecosystems, and equitable distribution of environmental burdens is critical. This overlaps obviously with transportation infrastructure. So a lot of the plan revolves around the tie between land use and transportation. Obviously, you've got Chapel Hill Transit, so you've got free bus service for the community. And so starting to look at, okay, how can we more efficiently use land to make it easier to take the transit that you already have? A lot of the recommendations, a lot of the input we heard from the pop-ups was about crossing streets, right? Just basic things that are difficult to do if you're out in 54. We all know those issues and challenges with NCDOT. And so really trying to advance ways to think really hard about how to make it just improve quality of life. So you can cross the street and take the bus without having to run across. Make it more viable. You've got a lot of bus lanes. I think the protected lane just went in Jones Ferry Road with the barriers. And so really just trying to make quality of life better, extending transportation so you don't have to drive to get everywhere. Partnerships with the WASA. So the plan, this is an important point, is not just about what the plan for the town government, but your partners. So WASA has participated, Chapel Schools, nonprofit organizations in the town. And so there's a element of this chapter looking at things that WASA can do about water affordability, for example. That actually can result in people losing their homes. And it may not be a lot of money for some households, but for some, it really is a major challenge. And so looking at affordability issues are key. You've been making a lot of progress on green infrastructure and really trying to expand that out, not just in terms of what the town does, but encouraging private landowners. Economic sustainability really is grounded by the race and equity goals, and really focusing on small local businesses, trying to help you the existing businesses you have, as well as trying to support BIPOC entrepreneurship. Why does someone want to open a business in Carrboro? So a lot of the themes in this chapter, John did great outreach work over the last year. We listened to that. We tried to incorporate ways to really focus. This isn't just about the amount of businesses, but how is Carrboro welcoming and serving and supporting your local businesses and your BIPOC businesses. I mentioned at the prior meetings about the amount of money that leaves Carrboro every year. I think it was about $151 million. And how do we close that gap? And there's overlap with the land use chapter in terms of trying to create some more mixed use areas that are well designed. What does Carrboro Plaza look like in 20 years? Is it going to have those huge parking lots, or is it going to look like something different? And so those are sort of things of what does Carrboro want to be as a community, and are there walkable districts, business areas, and mixed-use districts throughout Carrboro, and not primarily only in the downtown area. And then the tie to green technology, of course, that was already in the economic sustainability plan, and trying to get a bigger share of the regional economy and tech startups. Recreation, parks, and culture resources, great. Working with the Parks Department on this, and the events and culture programming. Again, this ties back to transportation, open space, and really thinking through, are there the right facilities? Can everyone walk within 15 minutes to a park? What needs to be done for those areas that are inaccessible? Does additional parkland need to be acquired? What are the facilities people would like to see in the plan? Francie added up, I think we got hundreds of comments about parks that we're documenting. So we want this plan to be able to substantiate grant applications in the future. And are the arts and events programming reflective of the community as a whole and the richness and diversity of Carrboro? Land use brings us all together. We looked at the land use map, and we've got some strategic recommendations that have come out from the community in terms of small modifications in certain areas. We've highlighted certain corridors around the town, and when you dig into the plan, you'll see there's specific recommendations for each one of those corridors. Not to make them the same, but to say what are the nodes along those corridors and how do they evolve over time to meet the principles of the plan, to be more walkable, to have sidewalks on both sides of the street, to maybe have a little bit of denser development, to have more affordable housing, but in a way that is gradual. It's like feathering in additional development in a sensitive way. It still feels like Carrboro. And that's what's critically important in what we're trying to do. And how can design be used to open up the design to feel welcoming, no matter where you are in Carrboro, and understand the difference between the rural parts of the Northern Study area. There's very different land use patterns in Carrboro, and this plan wants to enhance the uniqueness of each area rather than make everything the same. And then looking at historic preservation from an equity point of view, and really trying to look a bit, how does historic preservation advance the goals of respecting the unique differences in Carrboro, uncover the history of the community, and provide a way, again, tying that back to naturally occurring affordable housing as well. So a little different than historic preservation might be pursued in other towns. This is an unusual part of the plan, is that all of the major departments of the town are all talked about in the plan. So this isn't, some comprehensive plans really focus on land use, and they kind of stop there. This is really talking about all of the different aspects of the town and how they will each implement different activities, programs to meet the mission. And I've always been impressed, for example, in your capital plan, how clear the priorities are in your capital plan. And we hope that the comprehensive plan builds on that, provides those clear sense of priorities that the community has expressed over time to inform your decisions moving forward. So we're now at this critical point. You know, we've got 196-page plan. There's a lot of projects in there as you go through. And what we're working on at this stage with the task force is, okay, which of these projects that meet these criteria listed on the screen, really, which of these really need to be advanced in the next 5 years? So this is a 20-year plus plan. So it's okay for some projects to be in the plan that may not have all the resources immediately implement. That's okay. This is a 20-year plan. But does the plan have an implementation chapter that gives clear direction of how to get started? What are the projects that are going to have multiple benefits across issue areas? Which ones are going to advance race and equity goals, advance climate action? Which projects that you think that will gather additional resources? It's okay to have some far-reaching goals, but we also want a mix in the plan of things that can be visible to the community, that can be implemented in the next 5 to 10 years, as well as reach, bold goals to be the community you want to be. So that's really the stage we're in, and we really, as you go through it, we really appreciate your input. One of the co-chairs, Quentin Carrboro, had a really good point when we met in person in June, was which of these communities build community, which of these projects build community, bring people together, bring partnerships together. It's almost the act of working together sometimes is just as important as the actual project itself. When you look at MLK Junior Park, for example, I've heard all the participation that went in there, and now the biggest problem there is the parking problem because so many people want to go there. It's a nice problem to have, actually, that it's become such a well-used park so quickly, and that's because it has the ingredients that the community was really asking for. Trish foreshadowed this, but this is my last slide before hearing from all of you. We have a busy fall scheduled here. We do have a community open house tomorrow night. We did decide today that we'd be able to reach more people by doing it virtually tomorrow. So we got that, Catherine the Circle got that social media out just a couple hours ago. We will supplement that if we need to, if we miss people because of that change. There's lots of opportunities. We're going to have our 7th task force meeting on Thursday. We'll report back what we heard at the community open house, the feedback we hear tonight. And that's really talking about this implementation element. We want to be back to work with you and have a scheduled date for a work session. At the same time, all of the advisory boards will be sent the draft plan, and we look forward to their comments. We will then come back with a significantly revised draft in November that would then be presented for a public hearing, and then we expect to work with all of you in extended, continuation of the public hearing and the time that you need in order to review the plan and make the changes necessary to adopt in the spring. So with that, I turn back to all of you if you had any questions or comments on where we are today.
All right, great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Trish. Boy, that's a fire hose too. There's a lot of information in there. I've been kind of looking over it earlier today and following along while you were going through it. It's really a lot. Let's go through with comments here. We'll go Damon, Susan, Barbara, Jackie.
Thank you, Lydia. Scott, thank you so much, and Francesca and Trish for the presentation. And all the work that you have reminded us has gone into this by not only staff and the consulting and you all as the consultants, but also just by this community and this amazing group of people on the steering committee who I like to remind myself and everyone else just how great it was to get that group of people together somehow in that room virtually and help to lead this work. So I appreciate that we get to thank them formally tonight through a resolution. Rather than kind of really share comments on the specifics of the substance of the plan, because there's a lot there, and frankly, I have more of it to read. I've sort of hit some of the highlights that I have my own personal interest in, and so I'm really excited to see a lot of what's in there. I wanted to, so we're going to have a lot more opportunity, especially as council members, to be commenting on that stuff. And I look forward to hearing from the public more about that. So I'm not going to really talk about that tonight. I did want to ask one question about public process. Obviously, it's really disappointing that we can't have the open house in person tomorrow. I don't know if there's been some thought about maybe trying to still make that happen, even though it can't happen tomorrow, but I'll leave that to y'all. The earlier on in the engagement process, there were two events that were really important. This came up, these were summarized in the slide presentation, but I wanted to highlight them. One was an event that was, I believe, Lydia hosted with El Centro. I think Barbara was in that event too, as part of the kind of team that had led the conversation. There was a related event that was hosted by the Refugee Community Partnership. And I believe Lydia helped kind of lead that event. I don't remember if Barbara was in that one as well as Mayor Pro Tem. So those are both really important events. And I know that both folks at El Centro and the folks at the RCP really saw the value of those events and felt like they were really important. And so I raised that. I bring those up because I'm wondering, as we're sort of now in this kind of circling back around part of the process, right? Where we did all this engagement in the beginning, went through all this process around developing content. Now we're circling back around to say, okay, community, here's what you told us. Here's what we heard from you. Here's what we think we heard. Here's what we think we should do with what we heard, right? Is there some way to build into this stage of circling back, a way to circle back to those two communities in particular who did take the time and make the effort to participate? It's easy for us to sort of participate in this way, right, in this part of the process, but having made the effort to engage with the folks that El Centro brought together for us, folks that RCP brought together for us, to give those participants a sense that how they participated actually mattered in the end. That their voices are reflected in the content that you're providing to us in this preliminary draft. I don't know how to do that. If that maybe is another 1 or 2 sessions, and teaming up with Refugee Community Partnership, teaming up with El Centro again to do a follow-up session or something. I don't have the answer, but I just wanted to raise that as a possibility. I think it's important for folks who participate, especially those we made a special effort, right, to get their participation, that they see that their participation mattered. So just wanted to suggest finding a way to do that. Thanks again, all the great work. I'm looking forward to continuing to dig into all this material.
Thanks, Damon. Good comments. All right, we'll go Susan and then Barbara and then Jackie.
Thank you, Lydia. And thank you so much, Scott and Francisca, for the presentation tonight, as well as, you mentioned, Scott, about one of the criteria being, evaluation criteria was the possibility of building community. And that's really actually what you've done through this whole comprehensive plan. It's been a great exercise in building community. And as Damon mentioned, being able to engage people that maybe normally are not at the table. So I just want to thank you very much for that. I had just a couple of comments. One is, Trish, I really appreciated a lot your comments at the very beginning, putting this whole comprehensive plan in the context of the pandemic. It really is a kind of a remarkable, 18, 20 months of perseverance. And so one comment would be, I would just hope that maybe at the introduction of the comprehensive plan, some of Trish's, comments at the beginning, putting this into context, will also be put into the context of the final comprehensive plan. And on that same note, it's pretty remarkable, about 40% of the task force members being, I think, were people of color. And I was wondering if there's any way, this group, I think they also all had GARE training, as I recall, multiple meetings. And I just wondered if there was any way that a picture could be taken in person with this group, so that they too could be featured and saluted in some way through the plan. And then my final comment. Well, actually, it's more of a question, but I really appreciate the project evaluation criteria. And there was one there was one word that was missing in the criteria, and I noticed it only because it's a word that had come up so much during other parts of the report, and the word was access. I know, when we're talking about the parks, the importance of everybody in the community having access to parks and access to cultural resources and access to stormwater infrastructure, and I didn't see in the criteria the mention of that word. And so I just wanted to throw that out as possibly another criteria to be added. Maybe your thought on the building community is kind of the same thing, but I did want to mention that I noticed that, and I was hoping that you would consider some way adding that as a criteria. But thank you again. It's just wonderful to see this moving along, and I'm excited about seeing everybody tomorrow night virtually.
Thanks, Susan. Let's see, got Barbara, then Jackie, then Sammy, then Randy.
Thank you, Mary Lavelle. And thank you to Scott, whom I see on the screen tonight. Francesca, I see her. And I think, who's missing? Teresa? Is Teresa? She's missing. She's not here.
Teresa had a medical issue tonight. Yeah.
Oh, I understand. So yeah, so Teresa, who's not here, and also our beloved Trish McGuire, for all the work in the midst of a pandemic. Just this amazing effort and pulling together this really diverse group of folks around this whole process. I'm just really proud of it, and got to witness some of it firsthand as Braxton is on the task force, and just hearing some of the meetings and the very high level of engagement around this whole process. So a heartfelt thank you to you guys for leading the charge on that. And I'm hearing a lot of Barbara Fouché tonight too, because I'm hearing a lot of community building and being at the table. That means somebody's listening. So because those are two very key points, along with what Councilmember Romaine was talking about, access. And so I believe all that, has been incorporated into the whole comprehensive plan process. And so I got a lot of reading to do, as do the rest of us, just trying to go through the preliminary document. I did have one question, and it actually was concerning to me, and I wasn't sure why. We talk about race and equity being a foundation along with climate action. And so it was concerning to me that the GARE training was so late in the process, as I looked at it as being more so on the front end as we move through everything else. So if anybody could answer the question about why the GARE training came almost at the end, that's something I would appreciate. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'm not sure, Mr. Manager, you can kind of think through that if you're able to find out the order and why that was a little bit later. Maybe staff can help you understand the reason behind that. Thanks, Barbara. Let's go Jackie, then Sammy, then Randy.
Thank you, and thank everybody who's been involved. Scott and Francesca and Trish, your leadership has been incredible, and I thank you for that. I too remember when we were, I think our first meeting back in 2001 was actually on 9/12 or 9/13, and being part of that entire process. And I was comparing the two, and I wish that we had been as inclusive then as this plan has been. There were good people involved back then, don't get me wrong, and a lot of hard work went into it. But it kind of started out with an inside group, and the inside group continued to mold it throughout the process. Good people, well-informed people, but it was nowhere near as I feel like reaching out and finding people who haven't been at the table before is part of the DNA of this. and it shows. It really shows. I talk a lot about Carrboro's values and how this project is putting Carrboro's values into bricks and mortar, basically, and fields. And this really brings it alive. And I find that so exciting. If I were to ask the overarching theme over all of it, to me is affordability. Whether you're talking about living near a park so you can afford recreation, having transportation that's easily accessible and not expensive, and certainly housing affordability. That's all in there. Just an incredibly impressive group of people. And I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm getting ahead of myself, this has to be relatively unique. I know you two do consulting with others, but I think we found ourselves the perfect consultants for a town that, I'm biased, but I think is the best town anywhere. And I just think, darn it, when this is over, we should be getting some kind of award or some kind of recognition. I mean, this is a textbook case. And people always say, I know you two were surprised at the very beginning when we said, people in Carrboro get involved. I think maybe you were a little surprised, as I think Scott even said something to me about so many people are involved. So it's really, I don't think that when all is said and done, anybody can say this isn't reflective of our whole community. If it's not reflective of you, darn it, you were invited. And I'm hoping as we move through the final stage of the public hearings that we'll be able to reach even more people. There are two groups that I would like to see very involved in the public hearing process. And one is make sure we're getting voices from our high school students, because we're planning the town from them. So I know there have been young people involved in the task force, but we could somehow specially reach out to our high school students. And then the other end, I want to make sure that our retirees have an opportunity to respond. You know, we have several communities of older citizens, and I want to make sure that when we talk about accessibility and we talk about transportation and we talk about inclusivity, that our older citizens, that we make a special effort, maybe through the senior center, maybe through Carolina Springs, to make sure that we're getting the input there. But amazing piece of work. I always say I couldn't be prouder of Carrboro, and then something happens and I am prouder. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Jackie. Let's go to Sammy and then Randy.
Yeah, I just like to echo a lot of what folks have said. Really great work. Thank you, Trish, for leading it, and for Teska for putting it together, and especially for our citizens who have all participated and made it ours. And y'all have really done a great job in tailoring it and putting it together. I'm very appreciative. One thing, just a few comments in terms of, I do have like a lot of like little things, and maybe I'll just send that over email just for y'all to look at. But bigger things in terms of formatting, I appreciate your recognizing and valuing the cross project, the value of it. And in the formatting of the document, I just encourage you all to think of how to make that come out more, because sometimes when you're going through a chapter and then you come to the end, you get the snippets of where what is cross purpose can be found. But in that chapter, it doesn't come across as being as important as it is, especially since it is cross purpose. So I don't know what that would look like a big red box or whatever design wise that can be made to come through. And I understand you don't want to include everything in every chapter, because then it would be a 500-page document. You'd be duplicating it. So just a challenge there for y'all to be thinking about. I was curious about the missing middle and to what degree that is included in the land use plan. We've been hearing from community members, and as I'm sure you guys have, about the success back in the 80s of our higher density residential development, and want to make sure that we recognize that history and make a plan that is conducive to doing that more, because it is conducive to going back to those cross purposes, climate mitigation, but also affordability, and include kind of best practices in that regard as to what the value is on both those fronts, or why we should be doing it, and more specifically where. Which brings me back to this other point of the maps. I appreciate them a lot. I'm a little concerned about the specificity of lots and where things could be done, and I'm interested in either kind of like broader way of thinking about how things could be intermixed, or in lieu of that, the more traditional, like these are the areas where different zones could exist, and maybe steer away from that, as I think there's a value in making things proximate to where people are. But then I also know that there's a critical mass in the importance of commercial density. So, striking that right balance and having us have maps that really push us in that direction. And I appreciate what you said about feathering things in. It's challenging because you feather things in with like single standing homes, and then the people move in, and then they don't want anything different to what they have, and it's a lot harder thereafter to really achieve the mixed use higher density that would justify bringing transit to those areas, and then making them walkable and bikeable. The other thing is, I very much encourage you all. I'm not sure if you saw a while ago the local living economy document, which really specifies the importance of supporting locally owned businesses as opposed to just locally located ones. There's a lot of support local businesses, but there's a big distinction between a locally present business versus a locally owned business. And specifically in that plan, there are two pages, one which is about why local, and the other is about, let's see, I wrote it down here, what is local and why local, helping define those two. And if economic development section could really weave in locally owned as kind of a central thing, because that's a lot of work we've done in that, and kind of a recognition of the importance of stressing that as an opportunity to educate the community for why and what to support in terms of what is local economy. I very much encourage y'all to be thinking of mentioning whose historic lands we live on in the opening. You guys referenced it, but it maybe just more about the specific names, if you can nail that down. I do have a document that I'll forward that kind of lays out the complexity of it, that we don't really know exactly who lived here, but there are approximations of understanding as to who those people were. And I appreciate the historic layout that you put. I did read something about the namesake of our town, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know why the mention of him being a good to his workers. And what's problematic to me is that we know that he was a white supremacist and a racist, and when he was younger, was pro-slavery. So it's hard to reconcile being good to workers with that philosophy. And let's see, I just appreciate your recommendation that we approve the climate action plan alongside. I feel very important, because the climate action plan is a living document that we want to continue to update. We don't want to crystallize it and say this is what it is and we can't change it from wherever. Very important point too is to clarify that our goals in greenhouse gas reductions are 80% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions below 2010 levels by 2030, not compared to 2010 levels, but below 2010 levels. If that could be corrected in the document. Again, I'll just have a lot of other things, and like many others, haven't gotten through the full document because it's very rich. So I'll probably compile the rest after I've read that and forward it to y'all. Thank you so much for all your work.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sammy. And then Randy.
Wow. First, I really want to thank Scott, Francesca, Teresa for all their work and really accentuate the work of the committee. The task force has done an amazing job. I think what I appreciate most is the excitement that the task force members talk about the work that they're doing. They really feel not only the empowerment of the work that they're doing, but they feel that it's authentic. So I want to say that. Trish, you did an outstanding job of encapsulating the some very important qualities about the pandemic and the quarantine being the platform from which this rose. And I think that's a really very interesting point to me, because I think as a result of those challenges and those complications, we found ourselves in a situation where Carrboro Connects and the comprehensive plan really has created a new normal for engagement in the town, and has really given a sense of community and a sense of place, a very different quality and texture. And it's because of the struggles that we were working through at the time that we were visioning forward. That's a very powerful aspect of this. In the time of great difficulty and great despair, to have the sense of community be not only what is buoying you, but that you're capable of visioning forward. And I just want to take a moment to recognize that, because that's the sense I get from talking to people who have engaged in the events, as well as the folks who are on the committee. So I wanted to bring that out. Scott, on the criteria, and I'm really glad Susan teased out a couple of things. Access is, yes, it needs to be highlighted. But one other thing that I thought was interesting in the wording, and I don't know whether you want to look at that slide, but you have several questions, and if folks are going to answer these questions, so for example, does the project address race and equity? I would like to see that changed to how does the project address race and equity? Because does the project, that's a yes/no question, but we want to really know, how does the project address race and equity? That's the kind of information we want. Similarly, does the project advance cross-cutting goals? I'd rather know, how does the project do that? And how do people see that? Additionally, I would like to see that one of the questions that's asked somehow in the evaluation is, how do folks in the community see that the project has advanced Carrboro's livability and feeling free? That's our motto. Does this project really get us some of that? Because we keep talking around that, but that's really what, when people are underscoring their sense of place, that's some of the things that they talk about. And finally, Sammy, I'm really glad you brought up local living economy. One of the things on my list was, how do we elevate the value of recirculating dollars locally, which goes to exactly what Sammy and I worked on with local living economy. And there was one other point that I had down here that, I like the way the entire project pairs very sweetly the relationship between the built environment and the natural environment. Where we are, treasured with a beautiful natural environment, and this project certainly undergirds the appreciation for it. So with that, I just want to say thank you so very much. I look forward to tomorrow night.
Right, great. Thank you. Good comments, everyone. I echo all of them. And I also appreciate really at the end there, Randy, you talking about, I think that's one of my favorite chapters is kind of near the end where it has the land use ordinance kind of pulling in a lot of that. It's, but I did a nice skim of it. I want to dig down deep into it. So we have in our agenda, we have I can't get to it. I'm having trouble, but I remember there were two attachments. I think
A and
one was
C. A and C.
And one is setting the public hearing, I think, for November, and the second one is thanking the task force and asking them to work a little bit longer.
I'll move both.
You'll move both, Randy? Okay, and the second is by Damon?
I'll second.
The second is by Jackie. Okay. All in favor say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Sammy? What?
He said,
Hi,
He
sorry,
said
I wasn't clicked on Zoom.
all right, Sammy, aye. All right, Barbara?
aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
And Jackie?
Aye.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, y'all. That was awesome. Great presentation. Look forward to tomorrow night. And I know the work continues. So, all right, y'all. That was our last item. Motion to adjourn.
Move, we adjourn.
Adjournment by Jackie, second by Damon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, y'all have a good week. I'll see y'all tomorrow night.
Bye. See you tomorrow.